Top of mind is going to be the Nancy Guthrie investigation tonight. We are getting live vantage points from the ground and from the sky as Fox's drone team continues to monitor any and all movements that we've been tracking. Investigators continuing to work on the house. We did see earlier today that a white tent went up momentarily in front of the house. Not exactly sure what they were doing, but perhaps with time we will learn a little bit more about what exactly they've been doing. Some breaking news coming into the newsroom within the past half hour or so. Fox News Digital's Michael Ruiz with this, saying that there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between the local authorities there in southern Arizona and some of the federal agents like the FBI that have been working on this investigation. Ruiz with this, saying Sheriff Nanos, he's with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, Nanos sent a glove recovered from inside the home to a private lab in Florida rather than the FBI's lab in Virginia, according to a source. The feds will likely need to retest themselves, wasting time, he says. Ruiz also sent something out earlier saying that a federal source confirmed to him that the Arizona sheriff has blocked the FBI from key evidence in the Guthrie case. So this is something that we're learning more about tonight. Perhaps we will get some official word from Pima County or from the FBI as the night progresses. We will let you know if we hear any official word from these agencies. Let's bring in former FBI agent Scott Duffey. He's here. And Scott, what I want to do today is just go over some of the breaking news of the day and also go over some of our questions that are coming in from audience members. Viewers have been watching Andy's broadcast. We've been showing viewer questions all evening. We're going to continue doing that for the rest of the evening. Before we get into the audience questions, though, I got to start with this reporting from Michael. It does seem that a glove that was recovered from inside the home, that itself is a piece of news, by the way. A glove recovered inside the home. It was sent to a private lab in Florida rather than the FBI's lab in Virginia. Can you speak to me a little bit about how federal officials and local officials typically work together on collecting and examining evidence?
Yeah, good evening, Austin, and thanks for having me on.
Of course.
So I can speak to the cooperation between federal, state, and local from my standpoint in my 22 years in the FBI in Delaware. We had a fantastic cooperation, collaboration. Being on a task force, we had police officers from a multitude of police departments throughout the state, and we ensured, and that is federal, state, and local, that it needed to be a good working relationship. The movies, you see these typical rifts between the feds and the locals. I didn't experience that in Delaware because I believe the relationships were important, but also being a small state, we realized, hey, we all needed each other. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't rifts and that there aren't problems in federal and state and local, I would say, partnered relationships or partnered investigations, such as you see here, where the FBI may or may not have been called in until a few days. So I don't, with regards to Phoenix and in this area, the Tucson area, I don't know the relationship. I don't know if everybody is playing well in the sand. I have dealt with my counterparts in Phoenix over the years, and I know I have dealt with both local police officers assigned to FBI task forces, as well as agents. And whatever we needed in Delaware, we got, with a tremendous amount of support. And I've seen that across the country in similar fashion. So I think generally speaking, there are good relationships because the FBI and of course other federal partners have done a really good job in developing those over the years. Because everything ultimately comes down to solving a case. And resolving and solving cases sometimes requires additional resources that a smaller department may not have. But also on the federal nexus, if you have a federal case and you need to get something that's really in the weeds in a local community, only the local police department is going to have that. So it does require, and I would say when the FBI started these partnerships, these terrorism and these gangs or these any type, the cyber and the crimes against children, there's a multitude of these task forces that are federal, state, and local partners, and they've just done so well. And I would hope and imagine that even though we're hearing some things with these relationship issues, I hope they're blown out of proportion because we have all been looking from the outside in. But just looking at what's on the screen right there with regards to this glove, what I don't know is, was this glove packaged and sent to a private lab, which departments do throughout the country on a regular basis, prior to the FBI being involved? So that would be a question I have. And so thereby, if the glove was sent ordinarily the way we did it, and I would imagine it's done similar across the states, that if a department has started a partnership with the lab because they don't have their own at that time, then when another agency comes in this case, the FBI, then it would be a decision made at the top. Do we continue to allow that evidence to get processed? Because you want to remain consistent. So you stay with one lab. And so I'm hoping that this is an instant where that glove was recovered from inside the house relatively early in the investigation, packaged and sent out prior to the FBI being involved. I could be wrong there, but that would be my hope. And then, of course, the FBI getting involved and saying, hey, we're going to save you some money. We're going to save you some time. We're going to take care of all the packaging, handling, and processing, sending everything to our lab in Quantico. Then I could see this is now just taken on another level, and now let's be consistent. I would also say, Austin, that when an item is sent for any type of processing to a lab, typically you're not going to see a lab retest it, because then you're really starting to get into muddying the waters, and keep it simple, and remain with that lab for that processed item.
In other words, you wouldn't expect that the FBI would have to retest it themselves?
As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure there's a protocol in place, because I've been in this situation where the locals have come to me saying, hey, this item was processed, and not for anything other than a lab had tested it and came up with, let's just say, a negative result. And then I would reach out to our lab to say, hey, is it possible to have retested? And they said, no, we just don't do that. And I would imagine that's across the board for any labs to not retest things, keep it within that same lab. The same lab can retest things. We've had that done before, but not to have another lab take a look at it, because then you're really starting down a path that's just not going to be good in a courtroom.
So let's talk about a glove being found inside the home. We knew that they found a glove that was within a proximity that they were searching yesterday on the side of a road. We were not aware until today, to my understanding, that there was a glove found within the home itself. Unfortunately, we don't know much more than a glove was found inside the house. Is it possible that this glove could be nothing, or is there a likelihood that this is a real significant piece of evidence that they have?
The glove being found on the side of the road?
The one being found in the home, and if you want to talk about the one on the road as well, sure.
Yeah, so of course, I'll start with the one inside the house. So we know that Pima County Sheriff's Office responded, as it is their jurisdiction, and they investigate. We know from the initial press conference that the sheriff had said, we have a crime scene, and not really giving much more than that. And of course, raises a lot of questions to all of us on the outside, saying, well, give us some indication as what is a obvious crime scene look like? For example, if you have a missing person, are we talking blood? Are we talking ransacking? Are we talking bullet holes? Are we talking a multitude of things to say, this house has been disturbed, and so it's an obvious crime scene. Things are broken, etc. So on that part, you don't have law enforcement, medics, fire, which you're going to typically see. For example, if someone was in need of a medical assistance, thereby you have law enforcement and your medical first responders attending, and you got gloves going on and gloves getting tossed, right? And then ultimately, if you have a crime scene process, it's up to the investigators to say, okay, what's ours versus what's foreign, and what should we be collecting as evidence? So in that regard, if this evidence, if this glove is recovered immediately, that you don't have medics responding because you don't have anyone inside that house, then I would say, hey, this is a piece of evidence where we're going to recover. You don't know yet, right, until you start talking to people inside the house to say, for example, does she have a visiting nurse? Does she have anybody that's regularly there, cleaners, et cetera, that put on latex gloves and discard those gloves? So you do have to get some idea that the glove was brought from somebody on the outside. And of course, being one of the abductors or one of the people that had entered into this house illegally. Recover it is always a safe thing, and then you can ask additional questions later. It's when you don't recover something that could be a problem. So in that regard, and then realizing they may have a potential for fingerprint, DNA, any type of hair or fiber, I could see that item being recovered, bagged and tagged, as we say, and immediately sent to a lab. And that would not, to me, change anything, because the FBI has not been involved yet, especially if all this is done within, typically a day, day and a half. And then I'm not really sure when the FBI was contacted, but ultimately, if the evidence was recovered and sent out prior to me, no issues. And so now looking, and then of course, no video was available. At least I believe no video was available prior to the FBI releasing that video. What color was that glove? So was it black or a dark colored glove? And was it consistent with what they now, as we are seeing on the screen, with what this individual has on his hands? Now, of course, it raised the stakes and say, okay, feeling better about it. Let's see what we get back from the lab. With regards to the glove or set of gloves, I've heard two different reports. I can see, so for example, when I put on latex gloves, and I imagine all first responders, I take off one, and being inside of a crime scene or whatnot, I take off the second, and they're kind of paired together. One's inside the other, and then you discard them into an appropriate, what we would, as an evidence response team member, you would bring in a box that is for garbage. Hey, anything that we brought in, anything that's going to be discarded goes into that box so we can remove from the scene. And so is it possible that of all the first responders that have been the investigators, FBI, as well as other local authorities, is it possible that it is a first responder or an investigator that discard those gloves, a delivery person, whatever have you? Nobody's really looking for anything before this crime took place. And so you could find a multitude of things. You could find soda cans, bottles, any other type of garbage that's discarded on the side of the street. It's actually when you start looking, you're like, aha. So I don't get too excited by the fact that, hey, some gloves were found not too distant from Nancy Guthrie's house. And then I would be pooling all the investigators saying, hey, we're just going to put out a message before we start down this path. Has anybody recall taking your gloves off and discarding them out the window? Because it's, part of human nature. Hey, maybe I want to toss them in the back of my car. I don't. I toss them outside. And now FBI recovers them. And is it possible evidence, or is it just somebody that discarded garbage? So still be on the safe side, recover them, test, but now you're going to have to ensure, hey, unless you get an immediate hit to somebody that is not in law enforcement and fits some sort of a description of this person going into the house, um, you might have to be doing some DNA samples of your own people.
Right. So we've been taking live looks at the property itself. The time in Arizona, by the way, 6:18, the sun going down. We will let anybody know if we get any updates on the glove, on this potential rift between the federal authorities and the local authorities. As I mentioned, Scott, we've been asking our viewers to send in their questions. And by the way, for anybody who wants to send in a new question, you can still do that. You just scan the QR code on your screen. You go to the Share Now tab, and then you can, or excuse me, I believe it's the Ask Now tab. And then you open up the Ask Now tab, and you can send in your question. You very well may see it on our air. We'll be doing this throughout the night with our analysts and experts. Carolyn in Virginia asks this: since Nancy's blood was found near the front door, shouldn't there be footage of the kidnapper leaving with her also? Obviously, we've been looking at this Google Nest footage. It shows some of the images that this camera took of the suspect. At one point, the person did use a plant to try and obscure the view, and then our understanding is at some point, this camera was disconnected. I know it wasn't exactly easy for authorities to end up getting their hands on the video that was released, Scott. What's the likelihood that there's more?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It's a great question, Carolyn. So very much my own question. So you're definitely on that same path of a good investigative mind. I absolutely believe there's additional footage. And so if Google Nest with at the request of the FBI did some deep search here and recovered this video, that I would imagine, not knowing how many cameras are inside or outside the house, but if there were cameras that were in additional places, I would believe there is footage from those cameras, as long as somebody passed through, causing it, especially if they're motion detected footage. So good question. And the question I had with regards to the individual going up, because of the demeanor, because of the lack of urgency, because of just this kind of nonchalant, almost as if it's just somebody delivering a package, right? There's no harm, no foul. I'm just going to drop something off, and so be it. So my thought, not knowing if there's a timestamp or if somebody has that information that was already given, my thought is, when is this footage that was released to us took place? Was this right when the person arrives on scene, before anybody, if there's more than one, enters into the house? Or is it after the house has been entered, and so thereby one or others going outside to do a perimeter check, no different than law enforcement, to make sure the everything is clear? And so thereby, hey, there's a doorbell camera. Let me go and see if I can dislodge that camera. Because if it was the first time somebody coming up to that house, leaving the street and going to the property, how is that person not for a second thinking there's a camera there? It's probably alerting somebody's phone. Is it alerting somebody else's phone outside of this house? And is 911 being dialed and law enforcement going to be responding? That's why I asked that question. Was this the beginning, or is this towards the end of whatever has taken place in that house? So that's why, if that camera is removed, and that's what my belief is, that camera is removed prior to them totally exiting with Ms. Guthrie, and that's why we don't see anything with regards to that video, unless the video is being held by law enforcement, and ultimately somebody took that doorbell camera on their way out. So there's a couple of questions, because I know there was also another footage without the backpack or the weapon on him. So So obviously that camera's been there and capturing different times of when they're there.
Scott Duffey joining us. Scott is a former FBI agent. We appreciate the analysis. We'll talk soon.